Hey Steelers Nation, it's Joe Rockey with the Pittsburgh Syndicate coming at you. And in today's episode, the Pittsburgh Steelers have just re-signed Mason Rudolph, or at least that's what's being reported right now. The official contract details are not out. What we are going to discuss is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are saying with this signing, what it means for Mason, what it means for Kenny, obviously, and for the rest of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we dive into this, as I've been asking in a great deal of our episodes, if you have any contact with any of the players' charities or causes, please reach out to me right up here at that button to click where you can contact me about a contact person at that cause. I would love to have them come on, let us know what their charities and causes do to help make a difference to all of Steelers Nation and ultimately make the world a better place, which is what we're all here to do. So today, presumably, the Pittsburgh Steelers made Mason Rudolph's world a little bit better place. And it's a very interesting signing to me in a lot of different ways because it shows me more about the rest of the NFL and the Pittsburgh Steelers mindset than it really does about Mason Rudolph. So let's start with a very basic fact. Even though most of Steelers Nation only remembers Mason whenever Myles Garrett was punching him in the face and trying to kill him with his own helmet, Mason Rudolph is still a top 10 backup quarterback in the NFL and was last year despite the fact he was the third string guy. That's a fundamental fact. And there's a big issue that's going around the NFL that all stems back to Lance in San Francisco. And for lack of a better way of describing it, this is utmost cowardness from people who are in charge, specifically player personnel general managers. Because when we look at what happened with Lance, was San Francisco traded a ton of assets to go all in on that particular quarterback. That quarterback is complete and utter bust. Trey Lance is horrible. He just is. He's incapable of doing read progression, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of insecure general managers and people in charge out there that would rather have their team suffer just so they don't look bad. And thank God the Pittsburgh Steelers are not one of those groups. I'm going to point out two right now that have very clearly shown this message. The Chicago Bears intentionally do not have a valid backup on their roster. Their only backup is PK Walker, who could not keep his job on Carolina last year, that ultimately went through the dumpster of all dumpster fires at quarterback. But why does Chicago not want to have a backup behind them? I don't know. It's not like Lance or Kershaw. It's not like Fields got hurt half the year. Oh, wait, he totally did. The real reason is because you can't lose a fight that you don't have. And if you would honestly put Fields into a true and genuine competition in Chicago, there's a fairly decent chance he could lose. And then what kind of GM, quarterback coach relationship for that little trio lasts whenever the coach isn't playing the guy you spent your whole wad to get? How does the owner look down at you? So what do teams do? They shy away from the competition. They don't bring it in at all. And then they can't look bad because the guy didn't lose his job to camp. There's no one pushing him to take his job. Well, the reality is that because there's no competition, he doesn't grow as good. The old cocoon butterfly theory that you've heard presented before. That's certainly true. There's no iron to sharpen the iron. How many more Tomlinsons can I use right now? But more importantly, when he goes down and is inadequate, you've just told the team, we don't care about the rest of you. And that is the fundamental problem that all stems from the insecurity at the top of those organizations. Now, to show another one is the Miami Dolphins, the team that might have the most arrogant and contradictory offseason of any team in the NFL. So first off, they go all in for right now, and then their draft is all about the future. But that's a little bit off topic. Their quarterback, Tua, was contemplating retirement until 8 hours prior to the draft. But because they went all in on Tua, despite the fact they lost their first round draft pick for talking to Brady, it's so contradictory and corrupt in Miami. But long story short, their backup couldn't even keep a job in the Jets over Joe Flacco when it was all said and done at the end of the season last year. It is the Miami Dolphins backup is the reason the Pittsburgh Steelers did not make the playoffs last year because the New York Jets could only score 6 points with Joe Flacco. So what does that really say? That says that they don't care about Tua having a backup. They can't push him because he can't go win a job, just like Fields. If there was a Teddy Bridgewater there, if there was a Mason Rudolph there, the rest of the locker room would clearly see the backup's better. Why isn't he playing? And when you build a team with Tyreek Hill and Jordan Ramsey, who don't really deal with inadequate quarterback play, they'll point it out. So we look at all this all in and say, well, what does that have to do with Mason? What does that really have to do with a guy who couldn't even win out last year? Well, let's break into what that quarterback battle actually was last year. We signed Tribisky, and the Steelers were all in with the anticipation that it was going to be like Ben's rookie year. Established veteran, plays the whole season, and it's going to be awesome. Well, just like with Ben, it didn't go that way. Ben had the injury in first year, and in the first game, and was forced in there. We had to deal with Trubisky being an inadequate quarterback. He single-handedly cost us the game against the Jets with his interceptions. He cost us the first game against the Patriots when he had to come back in after Kenny's concussions. And when you're a net 2-loss quarterback and you only appear in 5 or 6 games, that's not good. So we look at what that competition was, though, putting our backwards hats on to last offseason. They were all in on Tribisky. They wanted him ready for opening day. And they were all in on Kenny being the future. So yes, they had a competition, if you will, but Rudolph never had snaps with the first team during all of the time in camp. So how much of a competition is it really? This year, I actually believe it will be an open competition for that second quarterback spot. And this goes right in line with everything that Tomlin has been preaching this entire actions of offseason. And he's preaching it by his actions more so than his words, although his words are certainly backing up. This is the camp of competition. There is no insecurity or feeling like I'm going to get yelled at and run out of the room in the Steelers organization. This is a family that trusts each other and a corporation that's built correctly. When Miami doesn't make the playoffs and that Daniels down there burns the whole thing to the ground and only gives the next guy ashes, that will never happen in Pittsburgh. Now, who knows when Tomlin says he's going to be done, but I do know he will not be ever forced to leave. He will leave under his own power when he wants to. But when that day does come, it's going to be exactly like how Kahn and Colbert was. It was going to be a smooth transition with trust moving into the next player. You heard Colbert say many times, Kenny was not a Colbert pick. It was a Pittsburgh Steelers pick. It was the right thing for the team. So when we look at this, Mason, I still believe, is a top 10 backup quarterback in this NFL. And there are many teams that, quite frankly, would be much better to have him there if they were willing to pay basic money. Buffalo should have a good backup. Cincinnati should have a good backup. They don't. They should. You know, you're built to go for a deep run. Saving money at the backup quarterback is pretty damn stupid, in my opinion. But what's even worse is the ones where Mason could have started at, and they don't want to have pressure upon their young quarterbacks because they're scared that they could look wrong. Fear that you're going to look bad is a guaranteed pathway to failure. It's just a matter of time. And this is why I know Miami's not making the playoffs this year. They're not a threat to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's why I know Chicago's going to have a first 5 pick next year. Quite frankly, Miami might too. So the Steelers, in a move that most people are going to say is inconsequential and or just yell about not wanting Mason back because of remembering him back the year that Ben broke his elbow. But the reality is this is an absolute great thing for the Steelers. This is one of the moves that shows in even deeper reasoning. They're all in this year, and they don't have fear. And that is something that is the Steelers' way, that as Steelers Nation, we take for granted. There is so much ineptitude that only cares about What is the next press release? Will we be able to sell tickets? I mean, that's what Jacksonville is. Before last year, they didn't have a sellout for like 4 seasons. And do you really think the Steelers worried about that? No. Steelers have a season ticket list that's still going back to the 90s. So, yes, there's Monday night games or whatever. The place looks like it's empty, but all the tickets were sold. And when we look at this, the Steelers care most about winning and doing it the right way. It's not like the Patriots where every 10 minutes you're going to see another cheating scandal. It's not the Steelers' way. And yes, is the team better off with Mason Rudolph on it? Yes. Do I believe there's a chance Mason Rudolph is actually the opening day backup? Yes. Does that give you the possibility of maybe trading Tribisky? I guess. I mean, I don't know who really would want him, but it could be there. And there's a lot of people out there, and I need to disclose this. I was on the bus that I wanted Trubisky to start. I was 100% there. When we signed him in the beginning of free agency, I wanted Trubisky to be good and be the answer. And I thought with all his pedigree, second pick overall, took Chicago to the playoffs, which sounds as basically impossible. I wanted all that. But I also have to be real. The guy cost us more games than he helped us. And at the end of the day, if Mason comes in here in a legitimate battle where he has a chance of beating out Trubisky and he does it, I think he will. As long as it's all an even competition, which there's no indication to say this year there won't be. There was last year, but this year there's no reason to say there won't be. Iron sharpens iron. We brought in 2 left guards. We brought in 3 middle linebackers. We have 50 safeties on this roster, or 50 corners on this roster, basically. And as I showed last week, we have way too many receivers for starting spots. This is competition up and down. But it's not competition of insecurity or fear. Yes, at the end of the day, there's going to be some people whose career is potentially ended because they don't make this team. But there's not coming at this from, we need to make ourselves look good by guaranteeing this guy gets the starting job. Kenny Pickett is the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers because he did not cost us as many games as Trubisky did. Even if we look when Kenny first started and he was throwing those picks and it wasn't awesome. Miami, Buffalo, Philly. There's a lot of things that didn't go awesome there. But he still, at the end of the day, wasn't the true cause. You look at his interception that he had that made us lose the Jets game. He hit Freiermuth in the hands. Freiermuth drops the ball and it's intercepted by the guy who's covering George Pickens. That's a schematic failure. Or it's a Freiermuth not catching the ball failure. Time span were caught by players who were covering another receiver. That's a schematic failure. Not getting into the whole Canada messed up, but Canada messed up. So when we look at this overall, the Steelers are going all in a time when most people are saying the Steelers have no chance. If you look at our Vegas over-under numbers, it's under 50%. There's a better chance in my mind that we win the division than hit that under. And that's not bias aside. That's me putting money down on the table to make some cash. That's the way that it is. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not finishing under 500 with this defense. And the only way I'd even halfway believe that is if you gave me a list of 4 injuries and they guaranteed it was Highsmith, Watt, Minka, and Cam. Unless all 4 of them go down for a significant period of time, this team's going at least 500. It's at least getting 9 wins. Look at the schedule we play. Is there anyone from the AFC South, with the exception of maybe that Thursday night game when Tennessee comes in here right after Jacksonville, that's going to be incredibly scary? I mean, I watched the schedule series as I'm breaking it down. We're in the middle of this here. This team is going to be very, very good. And the Steelers are telling you that with every single one of their actions. The Pittsburgh Steelers are all in. They're confident within themselves. And they're going to have competition that's going to result in players that don't make our team on final cutdown day being starters on other people's rosters. And that will happen. This team has created so much depth and so much talent. It is remarkable. And that is not even fully counting the 5 great draft picks that just got in. And if you count Trice, 6. So it's a fantastic position that we are in, Steelers Nation. And for everyone who's still watching here at this point, the end of the video, about Mason Rudolph, nonetheless, if you haven't clicked subscribe yet, you absolutely should. You're the kind of person who's clearly enjoying the Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate, and I am with you guys every single Wednesday. Today's obviously a special bulletin episode, getting ahead of the news cycle that just came out here today. But click subscribe. We'd love to be with you. One of the metrics we get graded upon is the amount of subscriptions. So we thank you guys for being with us. And as always, here we go, Steelers. Here we go.